We come now at this appointed time to hear a word from you. Father, you know our struggles are real, our issues are many, our challenges are great. So God, we now ask that you speak to your people. Teach this august body of believers gathered in this place so that we might leave inspired and transformed, ready and equipped for the mission that you've designed for each and every one of us. Now, God, touch your preacher. Let the words of my mouth, the meditation of my heart be acceptable in thy sight, for you indeed are my strength and redeemer. It is in the precious and perfect name of your Son Jesus, who is the Christ, and the redeemed of the Lord said, Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Grab your Bibles and join me in the Old Testament. Dave, I'm getting a little bit of feedback, so if you can turn the pulpit mic off and switch to the handheld, I think that'll get us to where we need to be. The Old Testament book of 2 Kings, chapter number 5. The Old Testament book of 2 Kings, chapter number 5, beginning at verse number 1. I'm reading from the New International Version. But depending on the translation you're using, you will find words that read something like this. Now Naaman was commander of the army of the king of Aram. He was a great man in the sight of his master and highly regarded, because through him the Lord had given victory to Aram. He was a valiant soldier, but he had leprosy. Now bands of raiders from Aram had gone out and had taken captive a young girl from Israel, and she served Naaman's wife. She said to her mistress, "If only my master would see the prophet who is in Samaria, he would cure him of his leprosy." Naaman went to his master and told him what the girl from Israel had said. "By all means go," the king of Aram replied. "I will send a letter to the king of Israel." So Naaman left, taking with him 10 talents of silver, 6,000 shekels of gold, and 10 sets of clothing. The letter that he took to the king of Israel read, "With this letter I am sending my servant Naaman to you, so that you may cure him of his leprosy." As soon as the king of Israel read the letter, he tore his robe and said, "Am I God? Can I kill and bring back life? Why does this fellow send someone to me to be cured of leprosy? See how he is trying to pick a fight with me?" When Elisha, the man of God, heard that the king of Israel had torn his robes, he sent him this message: "Why are you acting so foolishly? Why have you torn your robes? Have the man come to me, and he will know that there is a prophet in Israel." So Naaman went with his horses and chariots and stopped at the door of Elisha's house. But Elisha sent a messenger to him to say, "Go wash yourself 7 times in the Jordan, and your flesh will be restored, and you will be cleansed." But Naaman went away big mad. He said, "I thought that he would at least come out and talk to me face to face, wave his hand over the spot and cure me of my leprosy. Are not the rivers of Damascus better than all the waters of Israel? Could not wash in them and be cleansed?" So he turned and went off in a rage. Naaman's servants went to him and said, "My father, if the prophet had told you to do some great thing, wouldn't you have done it? How much more then when he tells you, 'Wash and be cleansed'?" So he went down and dipped himself in the Jordan 7 times, as the man of God had told him, and his flesh was restored, and he became clean like that of a young boy. For a few moments, I'd like to tag this text with the thought, hidden figures.
All right.
Hidden figures. Let me pause and say it's good to see Brother Philip Davis here. Philip was at the dealership a few weeks ago and bought a car from us, and we got to meet had a good conversation. So Brother Davis, welcome to Progressive Man. It's good to see you.
Amen.
January 6, 2017. 20th Century Fox released what would become a box office sensation. The film titled Hidden Figures traced the intersection of brilliance and burdens of three African American women: Katherine Johnson, Dorothy Vaughan, and Mary Jackson. These three African American women at NASA, and I quote, served as the brains behind one of the greatest operations in history: the launch of astronaut John Glenn into orbit. These three women were brilliant, yet burdened. Burdened by the perplexity of racial injustice. Burdened by the nonsensical nature of segregation. Burdened by sexism that dared to mask the God-given intelligence of three extraordinary lives. These women were gifted, but marginalized. They were intelligent, yet ostracized. They were brilliant, yet kicked to the outskirts of humanity. They were silenced and subjected to inhumane humiliation. Yet, despite the setbacks of racism, despite the sexism, despite the tremendous negative forces piled in heaping stacks in their lives, they rose from obscurity to prominence. Perhaps they were a prequel to the brilliance of Maya Angelou's poem, where she dared to suggest in the profoundly provocative opening stanza, "You may write me down in history with your bitter, twisted lies. You may trod me in the very dirt, but still like dust I'll rise." Rise they did, but how? How does one rise from the obscurity of nothingness, living on the edge of society? That's the question this morning's text leaves with the star character by the name of Naaman. No, Reverend Page, you've got this thing wrong. It couldn't be Naaman. Naaman had it all together. Naaman in Hebrew means pleasant. It means beautiful. It means agreeable. It means delightful. Naaman had everything going for him. He was the king of Aram's army. Look at how tough this dude was. The text tells us that not only was he a soldier, but he was successful. The text even tells us that even though he was not part of God's chosen in Israel, God still gave him favor and allowed him, despite his outside status, to have great success in his military career. He was strong, he was tall, he was good looking, he was successful, he was wealthy, he was living in the palace, but the text says he had leprosy.
Yes, that's right.
See, there's a great danger in judging a book by its cover. Looking at something that looks good on the outside, but get a little close to it and it'll reveal how real tricky it really is on the inside. See, on the outside, he had everything that everyone would desire. He had a good job. He was making money. He was successful. He had the favor of the king. But when he went home at night, when he popped his lean cuisine in the microwave, when he reclined in his lazy boy, the reality is he had a hidden deficiency. See, you know, Progressive, it's one thing to puff yourself up in front of others. It's one thing to have all the right things to wear. I was in second grade. I knew you had to, on the first Sunday, you wore the black suit with the white shirt and the red necktie. And on the fifth Sundays, you got to dress down. But it's one thing to know what to do on the outside. It looks good on the outside. It's one thing to know all the right things to say. You know, we can show back. I was glad when they said unto me, let us go to my father's house. But with two or three I gathered there also am I in this. It's one thing to know the right stuff to put on and know the right things to say. But on the inside, you've got vulnerability. How do you overcome, watch it, secret deficiencies, shortcomings, stuff you can't request prayer for because you don't want nobody to know it's there? Here it is. Watch it in the text. God has an answer for you. He sends these hidden figures along the way to help us overcome. Watch the text. There's a temptation to go straight to the king to discuss what the king of Aram did. But let's not move that quickly. There's a servant girl that comes along. You see her there in verse number 2. She was taken from her home. Everything that was familiar to her has been replaced in this foreign land. Her religion was a distant notion. Everything about this new place was strange and unfamiliar. Yet this hidden figure didn't allow the circumstances of her life to cancel her calling. She was one of God's chosen people, but that comes, beloved brothers and sisters, with a responsibility. You are chosen, yes, but that doesn't mean you go down to the barbershop to argue nonsense with fools. You're chosen. It comes with a responsibility. You've got work to do. Don't allow the circumstances of your life rob you of your responsibility. Thomas told us this in Confession and Revival. He says, confession is good for the soul, but it's bad for the reputation. Can I confess something to you? That was me just this week. I was tired, I was frustrated, responsibilities on every side, and I was tempted to throw in the towel. I said, why am I spending all of my extra money on this seminary? Why am I up at 4 in the morning reading in Greek and Hebrew and up at 11 and midnight writing papers? Does it even make a difference? I want to go to work like my co-workers, make a good living, come home, have some dinner, have a cold one, and sit on the couch just like everybody else. But I'm down here, come on, can I be real? Y'all not going to take the brakes off of me. I want some chicken wings, fried hard, and watch it. I'm tired of doing this stuff. I don't know if it's going to make any difference. These kids don't seem to be changing. Is it even worth it? I was ready to throw in the towel. But when you know you've got stuff to do, you pull yourself together. She says, if only this man would release me from my slavery. Nope, that's not what it says. It says, if only this man would let me go. Nope, that's not what the text says. The text says this hidden, unnamed servant has a desire for Naaman to attend church in her hometown. She was willing to overlook her own comfort and pray that somebody else would get delivered. And that is, beloved brothers and sisters, our responsibility. That's what it means to be God's chosen, fulfilling your responsibility to advance God's mission no matter how much sacrifice is necessary. But the question is, are you willing to do it? So Naaman, he goes down to the king's palace. And he informs the king of the news he received from this servant girl. And look at what King Aram says. The king says, go, eat, drink, be merry. He says, first of all, I'm going to write you a letter. Then he sends him with 750 pounds of silver, 150 pounds of gold, and 10 sets of clothes. Put it in today's dollars. He takes with him more than $1.2 million worth of stuff. I don't like it. I think the king was a Democrat. But we'll get to the Republicans in a minute. Here it is. Let me prove it to you. He gives him $1.2 million of government handouts.
Wow. Come on now.
But all government handouts and entitlement programs aren't created equal. See, we've got to wake up, brothers and sisters, and stop thinking that just because Big Mama and Granddaddy them voted Democrat, that does not mean that they got our best interests at heart. Just because they're willing to give us a few dimes and a few nickels, all they're doing is giving us just enough to keep us in poverty and keep them in the White House and in Congress. And say, we've got to stop thinking that just because they say they're for us, that they're really for us. Any politician that offers money and financial incentives in exchange for our loyalty is not to be trusted. Anybody that seeks to satisfy your comfort at the expense of your character is to be disregarded. What the king didn't realize is that there are some things you just can't buy your way out of. Okay, you don't want to talk politics. Okay, let's go this way. Let's talk relationships. Sister, if he thinks that just because he done bought the 2 for $20 down at Applebee's, he gets access to your bedroom later that night, he got another thing. Brothers, if she don't want to know where you've come from, where you're going, and what motivates you, if she's only concerned with what puts her in Coach, Louis Vuitton, Gucci, and Prada, she is not the one. Some things you just can't buy. So Naaman sets out for Samaria. Now, you all remember, the Bible scholars under the sound of my voice, you all will recall that Israel is divided into the northern kingdom of Israel with its capital city of Samaria, and the southern kingdom of Jerusalem with its capital city of Judah. Now, both kingdoms are under severe attack. The southern kingdom will be taken by Babylonian forces, and the northern kingdom will fall to Assyrian forces. The king, scholars agree, it was King Joram, received the letter from King Aram, and the text tells us he went smooth off. Anytime a piece of mail can cause you to start ripping off your clothes, perhaps you need to get your emotions under control. Okay, you don't have an issue with that. Anytime somebody can cut you off in traffic and make you lose your mind, anytime a text message can change your mood for the entire day, anytime a person can just walk in the room and your whole demeanor changes, perhaps you've got to get yourself together. How do you overcome this issue? Let me help you. It's just 5 real short words. Here it is. Can I help you? Here it is. It ain't always about you.
All right. That's right.
It ain't always about you. This man had a whole medical condition, and he talking about somebody trying to pick a fight with him. It ain't always about you. Somebody showed up at work late and you think that they got an issue with you. Perhaps they've got real issues that they're going through at home. It's not always about you. As a matter of fact, that's what these hidden figures are trying to remind us. We're too busy trying to take care of our own selfish desires. We want what we want, how we want it, when we want it, where we want it. Let me preach to myself. Paige, stuff ain't like it used to be. Kids getting into stuff deeper, younger, and having a difficult time. You don't have time to be getting thin skinned. You've got to push through. Somebody is wondering why they shouldn't throw in the towel. Well, here's the answer. Here's what it is. Here's what it is right now. Because we need you. Yeah. And the difference that you have to make in the lives of the community of faith. Amen. The king got the mail and he tore his clothes off, thinking that the other king was trying to quarrel with him. Here it is. Watch this. If your kingdom or whatever it is that you have can be taken from you that easily, maybe you ought not have it in the first place. If you've always got to defend your position and where you come from and why you got it and how you got it and when you got it, maybe it's not the position that you ought to be occupying at this space and time. Right. If you got to put the apartment in somebody else's name, have the car at your mama's house, maybe that ain't the one for you. If you've got to borrow from Peter to pay Paul to get the vehicle that you want rather than the one that you got outside, maybe he might not give me a fine car. He might not give me a Bentley. Maybe he'll give me a Buick. He might not give me a Buick. Maybe he'll just give me bus fare. But we've got to learn to be happy with God gives us and make the most of it. Now this king, he's ripping off his clothes. He's acting a stone fool. I told you we'd get here in just a minute. I think this one is a Republican. Because he reminds me of another Republican politician I know. See, this dude gets the mail. He tears up his clothes. He gets the mail. He goes off. Now the president, the king, he's sending tweets at 3 in the morning when he should be protecting his people in Israel. I'm just preaching the text. Sorry. He gets the mail. Now the president is accusing the mailman of bringing fake news. I'm just preaching the text. I'm just preaching the text. Politicians have been acting a fool since 800 BC, so it should come as no surprise when 44 plus 1 is in the White House acting like he has lost his ever-loving mind. So what happens now? The prophet, the preacher says, just bring the man to me. See, there's a distinction here between the preacher and the politician. The politician has a responsibility to adjudicate for the political well-being of the people, but the preacher speaks to the soul of man and woman. Everybody got mad when my brother Obama when he endorsed same-sex marriage. Why? Why were y'all at home cutting food? The role of the politician is to advocate for the political rights of all people. They got mad with him. He's not the president of Black America. You are absolutely right. He is a president of all of America. But we, the clergy, have a responsibility of speaking to the soul. Perhaps we got mad at Obama because he wasn't doing what we in the church were supposed to be doing with our responsibilities. Hurry up, Paige. They don't like this. So Elisha, the prophet, the preacher, sends his messenger with the word to Naaman. Go dip in the river 7 times. Now Naaman is going off. Everybody in this text is going off. Why is Naaman going off? He didn't understand why Elisha wouldn't come to him directly. Well, what's his issue here, church? See, the issue is he diminished the message because of the status of the messenger. He wanted the word to come from somebody that was at his same level. See, we've got to stop mixing up the integrity of the message with the messenger. You know how when your favorite preacher don't come to church, we don't. If they not singing my song, then I don't want to hear the choir sing. I'm just preaching the text. I'll be done directly. Elisha says, how dare he sends this young servant boy to talk to me? Don't get caught up in the messenger. You better discern integrity in the message of itself. He didn't understand why he would be instructed to dip 7 times in the nasty swamp-like waters of the Jordan River. I mean, this is Naaman. He's been to the finest places, D. He was down at the Ritz-Carlton St. Thomas. He was out at the Bellagio in Vegas, the Four Seasons in Paris. And now you talk about go dip in the Fox River, man. You sound real crazy right now. But sometimes we get too busy bumping our gums and running our mouths with our own indignant ignorance that we can't hear wisdom and instruction from God. Why can't I hear from the Lord? Because you're talking to me. You know, it happened to me when we first started in youth ministry here, and we first started baptizing, and Brother Pipkin got and his team got the pool back functioning, and I was all set to go in water, and I was livid. I was just angry, mad as a junkyard dog. Man, the deacons didn't set the temperature of the water properly, so now it's not heated right. Deacon Doherty didn't sit up here and put all this chlorine in this water. Now my hands and skin don't smell like chlorine. I gotta put my good suit on. This Hazelwood just got me this. I got to go smell. I was going off. Watch it, Brother Avery. He pulled me aside. He said, Pastor, come here. He said, you know, when I was your age and we was baptizing, we didn't have a pool. He said we had to go out back to the creek. You talking about chlorine and heat, we was dealing with snakes and spiders. And then he turned around and walked away, messed me up. Because we get so busy bumping our gums with our own indignant ignorance that we completely miss the meaning of what God has instructed us to do. Don't you get so caught up talking about how you want, what you want, when you want, where you want it, and God is already blessing you. If you just sit down and realize that you've already living your best life. You just got to connect with God and let Him continue to feed and bless you. Go dip 7 times in the Jordan River. Now watch it. Here's the third set of hidden figures. See, the soldiers that were with Naaman, here's what they said. Doc, you didn't carry $1.2 million worth of stuff over 400 miles. Now that's a conservative estimate because some scholars would estimate the distance at 3,400 miles if they were in the northeastern region of Assyria. And they weren't riding in an Escalade. At best, they was on horseback. Over 400 miles, carrying $1.2 million of stuff. Now you'll go through all of that, but you mean to tell me you won't go dip your behind in some water 7 times? Okay, let me take the shortcut because I can do it like this. Every morning when I get to the gym, there's a brother there. He's already there when I get there. And I go through my whole routine, and he's still there when I leave. Every day that I get there, he's in there. So one day I struck up a conversation with him. I said, Doc, what, man, you in here how often? He said, I'm in here 6 days a week for at least 2 hours a day. Wow. I said, man, what's going on? He says, yeah, I get here and I do my thing for 2 hours. I take a shower here, I get dressed, and I work 10 to 12 hours so I can rack up overtime. He says, because you see, next June, I said, next June? Doc, this is October. Okay. He said, next June, I'm going to a wedding. And I'm trying to rack up this overtime because I'm going to come see y'all at the dealership. I'm going to give me some nice wheels. And I'm in here 6 days a week, Dwayne, because I'm trying to puff myself up. Because I'm going to this wedding, and watch it, church, my ex might be there. Yeah. So I've got to get myself right. I'm going to be clean, I'm going to be swole, I'm going to smell good, I'm going to be riding nice, because my ex, watch it, might be there. Now, over some months, we continued to have the conversation, and he's going through some other stuff. And I said, this is what bothered me. I said, now you're willing to go through all this effort to impress somebody that you're not even with, but won't spend 15 minutes a day in prayer and reading the Word.
Say it again.
This man went over 400 miles carrying $1.2 million worth of stuff. It wouldn't take his raggedy behind down to the Jordan and dip 7 times. We've got to stop majoring in the minor and minoring in the major and get ourselves together and do what God has asked us to do. No more and no less, so that we can be effective in the work that He's called us to do. He went down to the Jordan River. And he dipped himself. I'm done. But when I look at this in my imagination, I see that he gets down to the River Jordan. And his buddies are on the shore. You can see them, can't you? And he wades down in the water until it's about waist deep, you see. And then he dips himself down, full submersion, and comes back up. Then he looks at his hands and he says, my hands, they look the same. And he looks at his feet and he says, my feet do too. And the people on the shore says, yeah, Doc, but you've only dipped 1 time. You've got to keep dipping. So then he dips a second time and he looks at his elbows and his elbows look the same and his wrists, they look the same, and he's ready to come out the water. But the folks on the shore say, no, you got to keep dipping because he said you got to dip 7 times. So then he dips a 3rd time, and his knees still look the same, and he still felt the same issue. And let me come off, that's my exit, because somebody says, I've been in the Word, Reverend Page, and I'm trying to get myself together, but it seems like my situation has gone from bad to worse. But can I be the soldier on the shore to say, but baby, you just keep dipping. So he dipped the 4th time, and he came back up, and they said, man, dip again. Y'all know what DIP stand for, right? DIP, that disciplined improvement process. You can't stop halfway in the middle of the process and talk about why ain't I seen no difference. You've got to keep dipping. That's what the message is about. You just keep dipping and you keep dipping and you keep going. You can't give up now. You've come too far from where you started from to give up now. He that began a good work in you is able to see that thing through. You just keep dipping. So you dip the fifth time and then you started to feel a little better. That's what somebody's at under the sound of my voice. You saying I'm not at my tomorrow, but I'm standing in my today, looking at where I was yesterday. I'm not where I should be, but I thank God I'm not where I used to be. So somebody's got to wait till it for 6 times, and then the 7th time, and then you clean out that water, and his skin looked like he was brand new. That's what the text says. But wait a minute. Hold on, y'all. Don't push me too fast because there's something that arrested my attention about this text. The Babylonians, they captured the Assyrians. And the Jordan lost its power. And Dean Bram Page is up here talking about dip in this river, and the river doesn't have the power anymore. And I'm afraid that what I'm doing is just not working.
Come on now.
I got the degree, but the degree isn't opening doors like I thought.
Come on now.
I've got the credit, but the finances aren't able to give me the house that I want. And I prayed for my child, yet my parenting seems ineffective, and my child is acting like they've lost their ever-loving mind. And I've studied psychology, yet I can't seem to connect with my superior. The Jordan has lost its power. It has. So what you talking about dip? Because, well, 807 years later, there was another man that came along and got dipped in that Jordan River. He came down through eternity. He came out of a virgin womb. And he spent 12 years, and then he went into silent ministry where he got prepared. And then at age 27, the text will inform us that this man went out to the Jordan and he was dipped in that same water. And when he came out of that water, he went into his public ministry, and he dipped his way out of that water, and he dipped his way through Jerusalem. And after he dipped through Jerusalem, he dipped through Samaria. And after he dipped through Samaria, he dipped all the way to Calvary's cross on Golgotha's hill. And he dipped his way up on that cross, and they stretched him wide. They hung his eye, and he bowed his head. He dipped until he died. And it seemed like, just like the Jordan River, he had no power because they took that body and dipped it in the tomb. But early on Sunday morning, all that dipping, it paid off because he came out of that tomb with power. And that same power is available to you and I this morning. You don't have to worry about the Jordan anymore because Jesus came out of the tomb. And because Jesus came out of the tomb, now I can go to work and make a difference. Because Jesus came out of the tomb, now I can transform my community. Because Jesus came out of the tomb, now I can make a difference in the lives of those that God has called me to serve. Don't throw in the towel because it seems to not be working.
Yes.
You've got to follow all of the instructions. Not just some of them, but all of the instructions. The instruction was to dip 7 times. And after that 7th time, you'll be transformed. I believe progressively that God has given each and every one of you a certain set of instructions. He's not asking you to take $1.2 million worth of stuff over 500 miles. He's not asking you to do all of that. But there's a small assignment that He's given you. The question is, will you have the faith necessary to dip times 1 through 6, believing that on that 7th time, it'll make a difference? The doors to my Father's house are open right now if you want to connect with the God that maintains all power. The doors of the church are open to you right now. Won't you come? You may say, Brother Page, I want to connect with that source of power so that my life can be regenerated. If that you want, you come. It'll be my privilege and my pleasure to introduce you not to religion, but to a relationship with the Creator of everything. And secondly, you may say, well, preacher, I already got a relationship with God. I've already been there. right now we won't put our trust and faith in just any and everything, but the one that created every and everything. We confess right now that we will put our entire faith and trust in you. Father, we confess right now that there have been times in our private lives when we've decided and declared that we will go another further. That this was it. We were pulling off the road of life. We were putting the car in park and we were stopping right where we are. We declared that we were done. Oh God, but forgive us for our conditioning. We recognize that you called and created us for a greater purpose. The community of faith needs us, and we will only be effective when your power and your spirit rests in us. So revive us, God. Revive us for effective living so that we might carry out the mission that you created for us.
Yes.
Now, God, bless us as we leave this place to enjoy the remainder of this hour Sabbath so that we might be refreshed and recharged to carry on another week. Bless us as we move forward. Now, God, may the God who reigns and rules supreme and sovereign in our hearts, may he be with us until we should be blessed and fortunate enough to meet again. Now unto him who is able to keep us from stumbling and to present us before his presence with exceeding joy. To God alone who is wise be all glory, majesty, dominion, and power, both now and forever.